Welcome, dear students, in this first video about World War One. In this video, we are going to look into the period known as the Belle Epoque, a period running from 1870 till 1914, and a period named the Belle Epoque because in this period many people believed there was only a bright future ahead of them. Why were they so hopeful? Well, they were so hopeful because this was a period without wars and a period of growing prosperity. There were many new inventions, the first car, the first airplanes, photography, film, and all looked bright. Growing prosperity actually reached almost everyone. So people truly believed that a bright future was ahead of them. But in the background of these hopeful years of this Belle Epoque, there were many growing geopolitical tensions. Starting actually with the last war that had started the Belle Epoque, the Franco-Prussian War, 1870-1871. Prussia, a German kingdom with some other German kingdoms, had fallen into France, attacked France, and actually humiliated France, not only by defeating France, but also by declaring a new German empire, the German Kaiserreich in Versailles, which not only was humiliating to France, but for the whole of Europe, it meant that there was a shift in the balance of power. There were first everything was in balance. Now a new big country in the middle of Europe upset this balance of power in Europe. This led to tension, but next to this there was also a growing nationalism, a glorification of the culture, the strength and the history of the bigger European countries, such as the victory of Germany over France, which was all created with the idea to create unity in Germany or unity in France, where also nationalism was growing. The same in the Netherlands, the same in Belgium, everywhere in Europe this nationalism was growing. Also amongst peoples who did not have their own nation state. Peoples such as the Slavs, who were part of a multinational state, Austria-Hungary, where different peoples lived together under one rule, and these peoples wanted their own state and started to protest against these multinational states. Remember these Slavs in the Balkan. We'll come back to them in a later moment. And as said, this nationalism grew, of course, the idea of the history of a country. So in France, where the Franco-Prussian War was still fresh in mind, this also grew the idea of having revenge on Germany for this humiliating defeat in 1871. On top of this, all European countries were building up a bigger empire. There was a race on colonial expansion, which led to tension between Great Britain and Germany, the German Kaiserreich, for example. Because Germany, which was new as a big country, did not possess any colonies yet, while Great Britain was the leading sea nation at that moment. So, as Germany showed interest in growing a colonial empire, this threatened Great Britain. They feared Germany would take their position. On top of that, and actually fed by nationalism and imperialism, we have militarism. In militarism, not only the soldier is glorified, but the army and even the usage of war, of battle in political issues is glorified. War is good, the army is great, and the soldier is the ideal man. So this actually leads to the idea that you should use an army to solve political problems. And as part of this, militarism, or actually caused by this idea that you should use war as a political means, all countries were also involved in an arms race, growing their army not only in number of soldiers but also in material. They were growing a bigger and bigger arsenal with the most modern weapons of that time, weapons that had never been used before. So there were big investments in all the armies of the big European states. Knowing that all countries were doing this and that this could actually lead to a war, there were also political alliances. Countries formed alliances. And roughly seen, Europe was divided into two big alliances. First of all, there was the Triple Alliance, which was an alliance created at the end of the 19th century between the German Empire, Austria-Hungary, and Italy. In the map below, there are the darker green areas. And the other alliance, actually a reaction on the Triple Alliance, formed just a few years later, is the Triple Entente, which was first formed between France and Russia, and then at the beginning of the 20th century, Great Britain in 1904, 1905 joined the Triple Entente. Mostly because Germany by that time had built up a war fleet as big as the British war fleet. When we talk about things as alliances, nationalism, imperialism, the Franco-Prussian War, militarism, we talk about causes for World War I. Deeper lying factors that have a deeper and longer background that grew the tension in Europe. But they do not directly or immediately cause the war. When we talk about that, we talk about an event which we call the occasion, the trigger that puts all this tension into one big ball and made it explode. And this trigger, this occasion, is the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand on the 28th of June in 1914 in Sarajevo. This assassination of the Archduke Franz Ferdinand, who was the supposed follow-up of Franz Joseph, who was the emperor of Austria-Hungary, was assassinated by Gavrilo Princip, a member of a young group of Bosnian nationalists who wanted a big Slavic Serbian empire in the Balkan. Remember, the Balkan. They wanted their own nation state with only Slavic people, only Serbian people in that. And they were helped in this young nationalist movement known as Young Bosnia, Mlada Bosnia, was supported by the Black Hand in the Kingdom of Serbia. And this assassination then sparks a big chain of events, because Franz Joseph was of course very angry about the assassination of the Archduke Franz Ferdinand, put an ultimatum on Serbia. An ultimatum which Serbia could not follow and would always lead to war. But before he started with his ultimatum, he had first asked the Kaiser of the German Empire, William II, if he would support Austria-Hungary in a war. And he had said yes. But Serbia also had a brotherly alliance with Russia. Russia led by Tsar Nicholas II, who actually happened to be a cousin of Kaiser William II of Germany. And as we remember, Russia had an alliance with France. So, by putting an ultimatum on Serbia, Austria-Hungary not only dragged in Germany into a coming war, it also dragged in Russia and France. Germany, Kaiser Wilhelm II, knowing this, therefore had a big plan. A plan known as the von Schlieffen plan. Because when this war would start, it would always lead to a two-front war. And in order to avoid that, in 1904, von Schlieffen, General von Schlieffen, who was dead by 1914, had come up with a plan to avoid this two-front war. The idea was to attack France through Belgium and the Netherlands, but in 1914 they only went through Belgium. Attack France through Belgium, so it would be kind of a surprise attack. And quickly take out France. So the troops in France, the German troops in France, could then be quickly moved to the eastern border of the German Empire and fight against the Russians, whom they believed would be slow in mobilizing. But by attacking Belgium, Germany also dragged in Great Britain. Because Great Britain, whom at first was hesitant to join in this war, now felt that the sovereignty of Belgium was broken, which it was, and that Belgium needed the support of Great Britain. So Great Britain then declares war on Germany and joins in the war as well, which brings us this weird position that with King George V of England also in the war now, that three cousins, because Kaiser William II, George V of England, and the Tsar Nicholas II were cousins, were now at war with each other. So, Germany starts the von Schlieffen Plan, but the von Schlieffen Plan fails. Fails very quickly, because as the troops are going up, first of all, they have to fight Belgium. Germany thought Belgium would just let them go through, but Belgium, of course, defends its sovereignty. And then when the troops finally manage to go through Belgium, they are quickly stopped at the Battle of the Marne. The first Battle of the Marne, which halts the troops of Germany, and instead of quickly taking Paris, they are now stuck at the border of France and Belgium, where from that moment on a trench warfare will develop. While in the east the Russian troops mobilized quicker than they had thought, and Germany is now dragged into a two-front war, which they had actually tried to avoid with the von Schlieffen Plan. But we will talk about that in a next video.